Hello, everyone. It's so great to have you here. Welcome to the Jewish Community Foundation of Los Angeles's Healing Through Artistic Expression, our third program in our online donor salon series curated for you, our foundation donors. I'm Lori Klein, the Vice President at the Foundation Center for Design Philanthropy. We are excited for you to join us on this webinar today. Before we get started, I want to remind you that we are recording this session, although participants will remain anonymous. If you would like closed captioning, please press the button that says CC at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Today's webinar will last approximately 1 hour. After my introduction, Charlotte Friedman, a program officer at the Foundation, will introduce our speakers. We will enjoy a performance for about 25 minutes and then participate in a storytelling exercise for about 15 minutes. During that time, you are welcome to ask questions by pressing the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen and typing your questions into the box. After the presentation concludes, Charlotte will facilitate the Q&A using the questions you have asked. In the interest of time, we may not be able to get to all questions asked, but we will definitely do our best. We are living in unprecedented times. The events that we have experienced in the last few months, compounded by the last couple weeks, have made the Foundation and our donors' commitment to Tikkun Olam even more important. Since the pandemic began, the Foundation has been closely monitoring how the crisis is affecting our community by staying in constant communication with our donors, with nonprofits, and with other foundations. Institutionally, we have distributed emergency grants for food and other basic needs to trusted partners in Los Angeles and in Israel. And our generous donors have given close to $4 million for COVID-19 related emergency needs thus far. Our staff is always available to assist our donors in determining how to best help during this time. You can also visit the Coronavirus Response Hub on our website, which offers a number of funding opportunities. For more than 65 years, the Foundation has been helping donors and their families make the most of their philanthropic choices. Whether you're starting out on a modest scale or overseeing substantial assets, we can help you magnify the impact of your giving and build an enduring charitable legacy. Through our Center for Design Philanthropy, we help you, our donors, to identify causes about which you are passionate, explore your areas of interest, and connect you with outstanding nonprofits. Our goal is to help you enrich your philanthropy in whatever way is most meaningful to you and your family. We also partner with professional advisors and help those advisors address their clients' charitable giving needs. We work with each donor's advisor to create solutions for maximizing tax savings, facilitating complex gifts, selling a business, and other matters to help enhance their philanthropic impact. And we also hold events to showcase some of the great work being done in Los Angeles and in Israel. We focus these events on issues that we know our donors care about or want to learn more about. Thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for being part of the Foundation. And now I will turn it over to Charlotte to share a bit more about our work.
Thanks, Lori. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's event again. I'm Charlotte, and I have the privilege of co-managing our Cutting Edge Grants program. A little bit about our Cutting Edge Grants program. For the past 14 years, our Cutting Edge Grants have been supporting new and innovative solutions to strengthening Jewish Los Angeles. The Foundation has invested over $21 million in over 100 organizations working in the fields of arts and culture, Israel advocacy, Jewish continuity, next-gen engagement, seniors, special needs, and vulnerable populations. The Foundation has seeded 7 programs in the arts and culture space in Jewish Los Angeles. Today, we're very excited to highlight the work of 2 of our grantee partners in the arts and culture space, Jewish Women's Theater and Theater dybbuk. I'd like to first offer some background about Jewish Women's Theater, who you'll be hearing from first. Jewish Women's Theater was established over a decade ago and works to create new, relevant, and personal Jewish content performed in unconventional and changing locations. Under normal circumstances, Jewish Women's Theater presents salon-style theatrical performances in community homes, community spaces, and at its theater, The Braid, in the Bergamot Arts Districts in Santa Monica. Since 2016, with the support of a multi-year cutting-edge grant from the foundation, Jewish Women's Theater has worked to engage millennial Jews to write, produce, direct, and perform original works of their generation. Its theatrical work highlights untold and diverse stories of Jews in Los Angeles and across the country by showcasing the experiences of Iranian Jews, LGBTQ+ Jews, and Jews of color. In a second, I'm going to pass it off to Rhonda Spinak, Artistic Director and co-founder of Jewish Women's Theater, who will share more about the performance today. Once Jewish Women's Theater is done performing, I will introduce Erin Henney, Artistic Director and founder of Theater Dybbuk. Now, off to Rhonda.
Thank you for that introduction, Charlotte. And thank you to the Jewish Community Foundation for inviting us today, and for all your continued support, starting with the Cutting Edge Grant funding our super successful Emerging Artists Program, which one of our talented alums from the first year now runs, Andrew Fromer. So back in March, when the quarantine began, amidst postponing shows, we at JWT wanted to stay connected. So we asked our community to share what they were feeling and experiencing during this unprecedented time. And they told us, they sent us their stories, writers of all skill levels. Then we delivered our edited scripts to our company of fine actors who performed from their homes into their cell phones. Then, with Andrew's guidance, JWT created its very first digital series on YouTube called Inside Our Time, and we shared a story a day for nearly 6 weeks. Today, you'll be experiencing 8 of our favorites from the series. Stories that help us process what we're going through and perhaps make us feel just a little bit less alone. Now, Inside Our Time, stories from the sheltering. Take it away, Shelley Goldstein.
Thank you, Rhonda. Good morning, everybody. I am Shelley. Our first story is by Barbara Koletsky, and it's entitled Striking It Rich. It has now been 30 days into self-quarantine. I have run out of things to do. Okay, things I want to do. There are the things I should be doing, you know, the things you say you're going to get around to. Well, that day has come. I start in the kitchen and open my first cabinet door. Inside, I find the 10 things I bought online but never opened. You know those items, the vegetable string machine that makes you think you're eating pasta. Yeah, right. The machine that chops, cuts, and steams all in one jar. Oh, and my very favorite, the seal and pack. These were all great ideas at the time. Then there's the drawer of gadgets you just had to have. I don't know about you, but I seem to only use the can opener, the spatula, and the spoon. And I can never even find where they are because there's those tons of gadgets I have to get through to find them that I don't even know what to use those gadgets for. Next, the pots and pans cabinet. Oh God, I don't even remember the last time I looked in here. I have 10 omelet pans in every size imaginable. Oy. I have an electric wok for dinner parties long ago given. Oh, then there's the 15 lids to pots that don't exist anymore. It's amazing how many things we collect behind these closed doors. The spice drawer. Ever looked at the expiration dates in there? I did today. 3 of them expired in 1998. I'm on a roll now. I'm gonna hit the clothing closet, the most depressing one of all, the clothes you wanna get into. You know, the ones you don't have a chance, like a prayer to fit your thigh into. But you know, there's those items, they conjure up special memories. You see them, you remember a feel-good moment you just don't wanna let go of. God, they take up space, and I have such a small closet to begin with. what's the rule of thumb? If you haven't worn it in a year, donate it. Lastly, the hall closet, a beast to tackle. Remember the time your kids in school were selling gift wrapping paper? My kids are now 30 years old. How about those charging plugs? Do you have any idea which plug goes into which charger? I don't even think I have the things to charge anymore anyway. Oh, and I found several gloves. None of them match. For years now, I have made gift baskets for charity events in my spare time, so I collect many items for donations to place in these baskets, and they're all in this closet. As I start cleaning out more, I come upon something surprising. You might say, I have struck it rich during the coronavirus. In a very large Ziploc bag, I find 100 small sanitizer bottles. I think eBay, Amazon, I can make millions. But that's just not me. Instead, I send them out first to the Jewish home, the homeless shelter, Jewish battered women, and then every senior in my neighborhood. So, what started out as the thing I really didn't want to do turned out to be the best thing I could have done. Next up, the wonderful Lisa Sorrenzioni.
Thank you so much, Shelley. The following piece is called In the Kitchen, and it was written by Susanna Kaplan. My house smells of chicken soup and matzo balls, and this afternoon it will smell of rugelach. I'm grandmothering myself, surrounded by the women who made me. I feel my grandma's strength in my hands as I knead dough. My Aunt Rosa winds yarn on my outstretched arms and then not so patiently teaches me how to knit evenly. My mother is all around me, telling me to stay home, be safe, and to read a book. Her suggestion whenever I whine about being bored. I'm talking to my mother-in-law in my mind. She appreciates my humor, the fact that we finally connected. Stop the world, I'm getting off, was her reaction to even minor infractions. I can only imagine what she'd say now. They are here, bustling around my head, reminding me of the strength each in her own way had to face in much more difficult situations than I find myself. And difficult as it may be to sit at home without being able to hug or kiss my children or grandchildren, I need them. I need my grandmother who lived with the knowledge that most of her family was murdered, who hugged and consoled me through a stupid and selfish adolescence. I need Rosa, the one who was destitute and had to live on the charity of family, who always had time for me and the reminder of olden days while we would knit. My Aunt Shandel, who made sure I never bought an item of clothing for my children that had black in it. It was a sad color for children, she said. Bad luck. She's here too, reminding me that the soup won't be the same without a parsnip. I can't risk the coronavirus for a parsnip, I tell her. She sighs. And my mother, always with me. My beautiful and glamorous mother who once turned down Errol Flynn and had a song for everything. I welcome them all into my kitchen and I listen. Now on to you, AJ Meyer.
Hi, thanks, Lisa. This next story was sent to us by David Chu. He titled it, "These Floors Are Great for Tap Dancing." There's a story my little sister Kayla hates. but our family loves to tell it anyway. When she was a small girl, we visited this cavernous art museum filled with old masterworks. And while I was fascinated by ancient Chinese wall paintings, my sister took one look at the marble tiles beneath her feet and declared, "These floors are great for tap dancing." While the rest of us loved culture, Kayla was the jock. Captain of her high school gymnastics team, she'd wear this t-shirt that I'd roll my eyes at. Gymnastics is life. The rest is just details. When she and Mom took a trip to Spain, they argued over whether to spend the night in a historic castle or, as Kayla preferred, a spa, close enough to hit the beach. While Mom and I eagerly seek out dusty medieval synagogues, my sister is someone who once climbed a mountain in Vietnam and bragged back, "There were so many snakes." But now that I look back, Kayla is brilliant. She got better grades than me. I hated doing busy work, while gymnastics taught her rigorous discipline. Organic chemistry, the class that strikes terror into the heart of pre-med students, Kayla scored in the top 5 among a class of hundreds. To be an ER doctor, you need a keen mind. Lives hang on split-second diagnostic decision. Kayla makes them rapid fire. You need discipline too, especially now. Exhausting hours on your feet battling an unseen foe named COVID-19. Gymnastics taught her well. And wow, do you have to be brave. While I'm disinfecting my Trader Joe's spinach bags, she's steeling herself to reuse masks and gloves and patch her face shield with tape, knowing 20% of coronavirus victims are healthcare workers. Scarier than a mountain of snakes. In the end, Kayla is indeed a bit different from the rest of the family. She's a hero. My hero. The greatest one I have ever known. And now, Kate Zental.
Thanks, AJ. Hi there. The next piece we're going to read is called The Upside of the Coronavirus, and it is by Maureen Rubin. Ever since my daughters were teenagers, my husband and I have known that they love us, but can barely tolerate us. Grudgingly, they answer our questions, but normally we get the Cliff Notes versions. How was school today? Fine. Their abbreviated replies to our inquiries went on when they went to college, got jobs, moved away, married, had kids. They always make obligatory Sunday night phone calls, but these only contain highlights. On Mother's Day, they tell me what an incredible role model I am, but they are busy women whose lives just relegated their parents to the bottom of their weekly to-do lists. But now, there is COVID-19. Overnight, our kids realized we are the coronavirus target population. We are seniors. We are inching our way to the age when we will need one of those non-existent hospital beds. Now we are barraged by daily calls, warnings, and helpful advice. Do we have any symptoms? Are we washing our hands? Are we using sanitizers? Are we getting our food delivered? When we laugh at these inquiries, we get lectures about our age and fragility, even though we are both healthy, except for a few pains in our hips and our knees. My husband and I are in shock. I didn't expect this. Me neither. I think they really love us. The coronavirus has prompted our busy, non-communicative offspring to display a side of themselves that only appears in greeting cards. And maybe, just maybe, this concern and communications escalation will continue when life returns to normal. I can hope. So, thanks, coronavirus. You made me realize just how much my kids really do love me. And now, back to you, Shelley.
Thank you, Kate. We have all experienced some unusual firsts these days. Betty Bildner shares one in what she calls the first time. I made one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I was in New York City to help celebrate one daughter's birthday and help another daughter recuperate following ankle surgery. As I moved about the city for 10 days in crowds, my anxiety escalated. Being in the older age group and having had pneumonia in the past, I felt very vulnerable and scared. My daughters are incredible souls and scooted me out the door while assuring me they were fine. But this is the first time in my life I haven't been there for my children. I love them so very much. I cried all the way home. AJ, you're up.
Thanks, Shelley. Some of us are home with our kids. Here's a story by Kimberly Anton called Staying. Staying is not an adventure our family is used to. We are goers to school, to work, on vacation. Staying is new. After days of staying, we walk the dog, my 10-year-old and I. She doesn't want to. Netflix awaits her at home, maybe an Ariana Grande music video. Dog walking is hardly an adventure. You walk too fast. The dog is pulling. Why'd you make me wear this beanie? She complains. 4 feet from us, a heron lands like a pterodactyl. Did you see that, Belle? I ask her. Oh yeah, she says, generously humoring me. She's in that eye-rolling phase. But when it starts to rain, and I suggest we go home, she says, "Aw, aw, we just got here. Aw, the dog is having fun. Aw, we don't do these things together, and I like being with you, Dad, and I won't always." Okay, no, she doesn't say all that. I only deduce it from the universal 10-year-old aw that comes from her lips. But once I convince myself that it is just my imagination making me think she is enjoying herself, she gasps, "Dad, look!" She's pointing to a beautiful purple flower standing proud and brilliant in the mud. "It's beautiful, honey," I tell her. This adventure is in the books. A dog walk in the rain. Remember when we climbed the stairs in the Arc de Triomphe? Remember when we tasted tea in Chinatown? Remember when we were quarantined and we walked the dog in the rain? Remember, doll? When you were 10 and we walked the dog in the rain and we got to know each other so well with Mom and sister, and we all fell in love and had so much time to just be together and do nothing at all? We don't know how all this staying will affect us. The dog is confused at all this togetherness. And there are a lot of dishes. But for now, we stay. We are up for this adventure. Turning it back over to you, Kate.
Thanks, AJ. The next piece is called Life in the Time of the Coronavirus, and it was written by yours truly. Think of it this way, my friend Alice writes me. We are not having to hide in an attic. And she's right, of course. And then I read on Facebook, your grandparents were called to war. You're being called to sit on your couch. You can do this. Check. Which makes me feel all the more wretched for struggling against my confinement, like a bird flown into our condo by mistake, constantly banging into the walls and the ceiling. But birds find life in cages too. And sometimes they even sing. Out to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Kate. So many of us are away from our loved ones these days. This final story in our program is entitled Dear Dad, and it was written by Jennifer Roth Krieger. Dear Dad, when Mom died in December, we knew it would be hard, especially since you had had a debilitating stroke just weeks earlier. You were patients in the same hospital, just floors apart when Mom died. When we buried Mom, we knew it would be hard, especially since you couldn't be there to hold us up like you always had. In your diminished state, you didn't even know Mom had passed away. When we moved you into a nursing facility, we knew it would be hard. Since you and Mom had shared a home for over 56 years, and we never ever anticipated that we couldn't take care of you ourselves. But we promised to visit every day in order to ease the pain and loneliness and guilt. When the virus hit, we knew it would be hard, since you are the victim the virus is looking for. So they shut your doors and sealed you in order to keep you safe and healthy. When visitors were no longer allowed, we knew it would be hard. Since we had spent every morning together for months, you depend on our daily visits for a hug and a familiar face, and we depend on them to help center our lives. When outside food could no longer be delivered, we knew it would be hard. Since matzo ball soup and chocolate milkshakes were keeping us connected, even if we couldn't see each other's faces anymore. Yes, it's been hard. So damn hard. We miss you every day, Dad. We're so very sad that you're far away from everyone and everything that you've ever known. But thank God for the angels who are keeping you safe and fed and comfortable, the doctors and nurses and caregivers, housekeeping staff and kitchen workers, all who have become your family during this time. We pray for them every night. We appreciate them every day. And when this is over, we will give them 1,000,000 thanks in person. And Dad, you will get the biggest hug we can muster and the biggest chocolate milkshake we can find. Thank you all so much for listening. We'd like to thank Susan Morgenstern for her sage direction, to Rhonda Spinak for curating the show, to Andrew Fromer for producing us and also for producing the digital series Inside Our Time, where these pieces first appeared. If you liked what you saw and heard today, you can go to jewishwomenstheater.org and see many more of the stories in the series. Thanks again. Now back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you. Wow, those were so moving. Thank you for sharing those with us. I'm now thrilled to introduce Erin Henney, Artistic Director and founder of Theater Dybbuk. Theater Dybbuk was founded in 2011 and creates provocative performances that explore Jewish thought to illuminate human experience. Theater Dybbuk has created and performed 7 original pieces, with an 8th currently in development. With the support of a cutting-edge grant in 2015, Theater Dybbuk offers educational programs, including leadership and storytelling workshops designed to deepen connections to Judaism for youth, adults, and professionals. Its educational programs utilize Jewish history, ritual, and values to explore diverse themes from a Jewish perspective. Erin has offered his storytelling workshops to a variety of institutions and community leaders across the country, and we are fortunate to be able to learn from him today. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Erin. Off to you.
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be here, and thank you to my colleagues at Jewish Women's Theater for your beautiful work, and of course, thank you to the Jewish Community Foundation for all of your support, and for all of you on this webinar for all that you do for our communities, so thank you. Before we begin, we just heard some beautiful examples of the value of story, and of course, the Jewish tradition is based in story and the ways in which it provides us connection to ourselves and to others. For those who go to synagogue, when we gather around the Torah and read, some people say it's like we're gathering around the fire and we are sharing stories of our tradition in order to recognize ourselves and to be connected to those around us. So in that spirit, today, and as Charlotte said, this is work Theater Dybbuk does both in the Los Angeles Jewish community and actually throughout the country. I think we were in about 10 states this year, doing work where we help communities to tell their stories effectively and efficiently and with vulnerability and honesty. And so for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to be taking you on a journey through your own stories. And a few things about this. One is, if you want to treat this as a kind of story meditation, I invite you to do so, meaning you can just take it in and think about this moment and think about the stories that you have inside of you. If you actually are somebody who's saying, wow, I would actually love to maybe write some of this story down and have it. Sometimes I face the blank page and I don't know how to communicate things I want to communicate or tell my story effectively. You can also use this moment really as a writing workshop. And if so, I'd encourage you to go ahead and open a document on your computer or to take out a piece of paper and a pen and put it next to you. And as we go on, you'll be able to use it. But however you want to do this is up to you. And this time is yours. So I'm going to be taking you through a process, and hopefully it will help you to think about your own stories and the way you want to tell the story of this moment and other moments of challenge and opportunity in our world and our lives. So thank you. So the first thing is, before we begin a process of thinking about story, it's really important to get into a state of being able to tell a story. A lot of times I work with people and they say, oh, I have trouble when I face that blank page. As I mentioned earlier, I've got writer's block, and it may be because we've not done what we need to do to be present. So on this morning, where a lot's going on in our world, this could be a nice opportunity to just get grounded and be here with yourself and whoever happens to be in the room with you. So the first thing is, if you are in a space where you are seated, I can't see you, so you may be in all sorts of configurations, but if you're in a space where you're seated, the first thing I would encourage is go ahead and just feel your feet on the floor. Just notice them on the floor, and if you feel like they're tight at all, or you're holding your toes or your arches, go ahead and let those loosen. And if it helps you to close your eyes as you go through this reflection or meditation, I encourage you to do that as well. So go ahead and just let whatever tension is in your feet, let it go. Trust that the floor is holding you. You don't have to work to have those feet held. And if you're not seated, you can just use this to kind of go through your body and get present. Next, take a deep breath. Let it out. And now, that loosening sense that was in your feet, let it just go up through your ankles and your lower legs. Just a feeling of letting it go. You may even find that you want to move your ankles around and kind of put them in a circle and let them loosen. And now that sense of loosening, let it make its way up your legs a little bit into your calves. We sometimes hold tension in our legs and in your knees. You can even kind of move your knees around in space. Again, you might be there alone. No one can see you. Go ahead and enjoy it. And go ahead and let that feeling of loosening tension just move into your upper legs and your thighs and into your hips. And you can even, like I said, you're alone. You can even let your hips kind of move around in space. You may have been already sitting a long time this morning and may not be in touch with your body. Just go ahead and let it go. And now that sense, let it move into your stomach and your lower back. And again, loosening the stomach. No need to hold it in. Let it go. And into your kind of middle there and your middle back and into your chest. If your chest is, you're holding it out proud, maybe let it go loose. If you're kind of sunken, maybe let it stick out, whatever changes the dynamic. And now into your shoulders, and go ahead and roll your shoulders. Let those loosen a little. And that same loosening energy, let it go down your arms, into your biceps and your elbows and your forearms, and maybe into even your fingers and your hands. If you find it helpful, you can even move your fingers around. Don't forget to breathe. And that sense of loosening, let it work its way back up your arms and into your shoulders and your neck. And again, you can let your neck move around. Sometimes we forget that our necks have our heads. We don't have to work. We hold a lot of tension there. They got it. Now into your chin. We tend to hold our jaws kind of tight. So what happens if you just let your mouth go loose? And even your upper lip can go loose, and your lips, and your cheek, and your nose, your eyes. Maybe even if your eyes are still open, you want to let them go soft. Forehead, there are lines kind of being held there, let them go slack. Top of the head. And just take a deep breath. And just notice, before we start the story process, if you're in even a slightly different state than you were 2 minutes ago, that you might have been, you might be feeling less tense and relaxed, or in a funny way, you might be feeling more tense because maybe this is the first time today you checked in with yourself, and that can bring up things. For the sake of telling story, both of those are welcome. So allow it to just channel into the story. All right. So now go ahead and open your eyes if they've been closed. I want to acknowledge that we are in a moment of particular challenge and opportunity in our society in a variety of ways. And obviously, there are questions on our mind connected to the pandemic and being at home. There are questions on our mind connected to the fight for racial justice that's going on, to a variety of other factors in our society. So as you think of your stories, I will encourage you to use this time to tell the story that most resonates with you as you're reflecting on this moment. So I'm going to give you 2 story prompts, and then I will help you to choose which one you want to use. Old teaching trick is that if I give you only 1 prompt and it doesn't resonate with you, you have nowhere to go. But if I give you 2, hopefully 1 will resonate with you and you can find a way to find your story. So the first thing I'd like you to do is think for a moment. Again, if it helps you to close your eyes, feel free to do so. Think for a moment of stories from your past, not right now, where you experienced challenges, things that were difficult. And on the other side of that difficulty, something new was born or something changed. This was a challenge in my primary relationship, and we had a major conflict around this. And by working through that conflict, things changed and were better. This was a challenge in my career. I was being called on to show up in a different way. And on the back end of that, I did, and my life was transformed. Those are big ones. There's also small ones, the small conflicts we have that then change the nature of how we interact with people. you probably have an infinite number of these stories of challenge and difficulty and conflict that somehow led to something greater. So take just a moment, 20 seconds, I'm going to go silent, and I want you to see if you can home in on one story from your life that's really just this morning resonating with you for whatever the reason. One story of challenge that you worked with and gave birth to something new or greater. 20 seconds. Great. So what I would like you to do is in your mind's eye, or if you are writing, go ahead and name this. This is the story of when I overcame that challenge in my career, relationship, etc., etc. Give it a very quick name, 5 words, 6 words, just so you remember what it is. This is the story of. And if you're writing, go ahead and write it down very quickly. Great. I'm now going to give a second prompt. And again, the first one may have really worked for you and you may be really thinking of that. And if it didn't, this gives you another option. So as I said, this moment has its particular challenges and opportunities. And, you know, the way we tell a story influences how we see the moment. So I'm going to invite you to think about this time right now that we're all in and the particulars of what it means to you. And think about how you want to tell the story of this moment. Meaning, is this a story of finding unexpected connection? That's one way to tell the story of this moment. Is this the story of learning about yourself and things you didn't realize, and that could lead to change? Is this the story of reconnecting with old friends? Is this the story of, boy, there's challenge, but I see that in the future X? So think for yourself, again, I'll go for about 20 seconds of silence, of how might you want to tell the story of this moment in your own life or in our society, whatever that prompt means to you, in a way that feels like it could be healing or provide an opportunity for seeing this in a new way or in a way you already do and naming it. So about 20 seconds to think, this is the story of, about this moment. And go ahead and name that again in your mind's eye or write it down if you've got a document open or a piece of paper. This is the story of whatever you want to say that this moment is the story of for you and or society. Now what I would like you to do is choose one of these stories you might want to tell. So again, there's the story of what was, the story of that challenge that led to something new, or there is the story of now. Just this morning, which is the story that you want to reflect on and think about? And just go ahead and make a choice. First instinct. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take you through a very brief story visualization. And the reason why I always do a visualization on story before we ask people to really develop the story is that, you know, there's an old story about Mozart that people say, oh, Mozart was a genius. He just wrote his first drafts of his symphonies were right there. And of course, what likely happened, there's some evidence of this, was that he actually thought about what he was composing first and then was transcribing. So this way, he wasn't facing writer's block on that page. And this is very similar. If you can envision your story first, then when you approach that page, it's almost like you are transcribing that which already exists. So we're going to do a little visualization. And again, if closing your eyes helps, go ahead. I'll try and speak gently. So first, this story, whatever your story is, the story you named, begins with context. Every story often begins with, what do we need to know to understand this story? Where are we? Who's there? Who's not there? Are we in a particular place? What do we need to know about the surrounding events that led to this story? Either from a larger society standpoint or from a personal standpoint. What little details really matter for us to understand who you are and who this story is about and how it functions? And then once you have that, we go into the true beginning of the story, which is kind of the inciting incident. What's occurring? You know, if you chose the story of the then, what's the precursor to the challenge? What causes the challenge to occur? And if you're writing the story of the now, what leads to this moment and how does it begin? You know, I found myself suddenly at home. It was March 13th, right? Where does it start? And what are the sights? What are the smells? What are the sounds that we need to get so that we really feel we're in the story? Who are the people with you? What's your relationship to them? Who's missing and that you wish was there? And then we move into the middle of the story. And the middle is, of course, where all the action happens. This is, if you think about our biblical Exodus narrative, this is the 40 years in the desert. It is the majority of the story. It is where all the obstacles occur and where the opportunities occur as well. So if you chose the story of the then, the middle of your story might be where the conflict is occurring. How did you feel? What were the arguments or challenges? What were the obstacles you approached? How did you overcome them? How did you work with them? When did you make mistakes? When did you actually try something that really worked and was the right choice? And if it's the story of the now, what's happening that supports your version of the story? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What's inspiring you? What moments of connection? What moments of disconnection? What moments of questioning? And what moments of answering are coming up for you in this moment? And again, relationships, who's there? Single words, phrases that are coming up for you in this story. And then we move to the end of the story. Now, stories end in a variety of ways. You know, if this is the story of the then, you might tell the ending that was the outcome. How did it end and what did it lead to? What meaningful change or new understanding or new opportunity did this lead to and why? And if it's the story of the now, the ending might be where we are now. It might end with a question, an uncertainty, a possibility, or it might end with an aspiration. What is the world you see coming? What is the change you hope will occur out of this moment? And then lastly, kind of the epilogue, the end after the end, is what might be one last word or phrase that would help you conclude this story? What's a last reflection or a lesson that you want us to take from how you see this story? Now, in our last 2 minutes or so, so what I'm doing, because we only have 15, 20 minutes, I'm setting you up for you to really think about how if you want to build this story out after this, you have all the tools to do so. So if you did open a document, I would like you to, and if you didn't, you can totally do this in your mind's eye. I want you to think about the first line of your story. I walked into the room. The year was 2020. I didn't know what to expect, right? The first line of your story, where does it begin? And go ahead and, if you are writing, write it at the top of the page. I'll just give about 20 seconds for you to think about this first line. And now, what I would like you to do is, if you are writing, go ahead and skip a page, or in your mind's eye, skip that page and go to the bottom and write a last line to your story. And this could be that final reflection on what the story means. It could be that dream of the future. It could be the last words that you want to leave the story with. First instinct, you can always change it later. Go ahead and write it down now or picture it in your mind's eye. Where does this story end? Great. Now, you have everything you need to write this story. You have a beginning, you have an end, you have your whole visualization of the story. And what I'm going to do is give 30 seconds now for you to make some notes about what would come between that beginning and that end. So those things you pictured, just make a few little bullet points about how you connect that beginning and the end. So when you return to the story later, you can really fill in the details and have almost like a little soft outline to help you. And if you're doing this just as a meditation, go ahead and sit in silence for 30 seconds and think about, now that you've thought through the whole story, how would you contain it? How would you tell it in between this beginning and ending? So just 30 seconds right now, and then we'll bring it to a conclusion. About 10 more seconds. Great. So as I conclude, I will say this, I want to invite you to, number one, continue to develop these stories. And even if you do develop them further and want to share them, I'm sure that our friends at the foundation would love to hear them. You can feel free to send them on. And, you know, the healing power of story, these stories, one, can serve to teach us about the moment. Some of you may have imagined the story of this moment in a healing way, even though you're actually finding it very challenging right now. How we tell stories can really influence the way in which we interact in the moment. And you might even want to consider sharing these stories with your family or friends as a way to bind together in the spirit of what we know from our history allows us an entry point to personal and communal connection. Thank you for this time, and it was a real pleasure to be with you, and thank you to the Foundation for allowing this space and time for all who are here. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Aaron. That was really wonderful. So now I'm going to open it up to anyone that has questions for Aaron or Rhonda, either about the performances or about the organizations. And I just wanted to remind everyone that there is the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen where you can type your question. We've already got a few good ones. So I'm going to start with this one. So this is for both of you. Rhonda, if you want to start off, how does the work that we saw today fit into the larger context of the work that you're doing?
That's a great question. I think for us, it's all about the story. And Aaron, that was a beautiful process. I enjoyed it very much. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
You know, we share Jewish stories. That's what we do at the heart of our work, whether that's on stage or whether that's digitally. That's what we do. So the COVID stories basically took what was happening now and reflected back to our audience. And so it's a part of the larger gestalt of looking at various themes and then exploring those themes.
Thanks, Rhonda. I'll offer, I think that in terms of our relationship to story and to how this relates to our work, because we do a variety of things from developing large-scale theatrical works that we develop over 1 to 3 years per project that involve dance and live music, all the way to story workshops. I think the thread that binds them all is about kind of productive discomfort and useful provocation. This idea that actually by pushing against our boundaries, that we actually reach out to the world and the world reaches back. And I think even this, which was a very gentle story workshop, it still asks people to show up for themselves and therefore for their community with honesty and with depth of investigation. And I think that kind of is a thread that goes through our work and also is aligned, I think, with our Jewish communal values. You know, I mean, our Talmud is about a kind of deep investigation of meaning and the debates around that meaning. So I think about it as gentle provocation.
Great, thank you. The second question is for Rhonda. Have you seen a change in the stories you're receiving as the pandemic has dragged on?
It's a very good question. We are actually in the middle of creating our emerging artist show. We do one a year, and it's called For Goodness Sake. And, you know, when we were curating that show, there were several stories that came in that touched on the pandemic. And it seemed like we couldn't not include stories that reflected the time. So given that this is on people's minds, and given that people are submitting stories to current themes, yes, absolutely, the pandemic is a part of it. And I wanted to just also mention, for those of you that actually have a story that seems to be formulating from Erin's process, feel free to submit to us. We love those stories.
Erin, this is for you. Can you talk a little bit about what your storytelling workshops would look like in person?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So one is that obviously, because we're then embodied people, a lot of it is about a kind of connection. I do believe, coming especially from physical theater, that this whole instrument is where we carry truth, right? And that story is carried both in our bodies and in our voices and in our words. So the first thing we do is we get people immediately up in some form, and they have some kind of interaction with each other where they tell a little bit to one or two other people of a story. And that's by design, that we don't do the classic, our Jewish community loves to gather people in circles and ask for people to be really vulnerable right away in front of large groups. And what I find is that often some people get shut down instead of open up. So we actually start in small groups and then kind of have an ever widening circle. And then we then move to doing something very similar where people develop their stories. Then they actually get put into pairs where they get a feedback model for how to story coach effectively. So they almost in pairs, in Hebruta, whatever you want to call it, they coach each other on how to think about their stories in an even more mindful way. And then we invite people to share the stories on the group level. And because my background is in a lot of story coaching, myself and our other facilitators often do some listening and story coaching in the moment. So in a way, our story workshops double as both story workshops and facilitation trainings for Jewish leaders.
Nice. Okay, so I think this is going to be the last question, and it is for both of you. Can you, and I guess Erin, you can start. Can you tell us about your background and the origin story of your organizations briefly?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I would love that. So I'm a longtime theater artist, writer, director, and story coach working around the country. And I started noticing that I was getting a lot of ideas connected to Jewish history. And, you know, truth be told, I grew up in kind of a small c conservative household, meaning the conservative movement in New Jersey, come from, I think there were 7 generations of rabbis in Ukraine until my great-grandfather came here. And so I had this sort of deep well of connection, but it wasn't something I was really exploring in my career. And I started noticing I was getting ideas connected to Jewish history and folklore. And frankly, I looked around LA and I thought LA has the 2nd largest Jewish population in the country. And I thought, if I'm wanting this, and at the time I was in my early 30s, I thought if I'm wanting this kind of deep investigation of Jewish history as a way to look at issues in our world, I bet others do as well, especially using kind of experimental and large-scale theatrical techniques. And so I thought, if I want it, maybe there's a big community out there that wants it as well. And so I was like, let's give it a go. And then we started getting calls for our educational work too, because people went, oh, that's really interesting, you're doing this, can you work with our community? And so synagogues and religious schools started calling. And so we started building this, this organization with many branches that kind of happened organically over the years. So, I mean, there's much more to the origin story, but that's a beginning. I saw a need and thought, why not meet it with the unique talent, skills, and interests that we have. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Rhonda?
So I'm a writer, and when I was submitting my plays to the United States Theater, I noticed back then that there was really no place for a Jewish woman to submit her stories and be sure that they were going to be read. Plenty of Jewish women were on boards of secular institutions, but the woman's voice was much less back then. And that made me sad that people like myself who might have a story to tell couldn't make our way into like theater easily. So in starting Jewish Women's Theater, I wanted a place where every Jewish woman could have her story read and considered and perhaps be used on stage. From those early days, men started coming to see our work and started enjoying it. And so we started expanding to men's stories. And then we felt that, well, it's not just about the Ashkenazi Jew, it's about the Persian Jew, it's about the Sephardic Jew, it's about the Latino Jew, it's about the Jew of color. And so it's gender issues. And all of a sudden, converts, you know, Jews who marry, non-Jews who marry Jews but have a Jewish life. It's all our stories. And so what started as this really narrow kind of wanting to share just Jewish women's stories, it's really become this bigger thing. And we just recently went on a tour of the South, 8 performances in 9 days in 6 states, insane. But we were wondering whether what we do here in Los Angeles would translate to folks, Jews of the South, and it did. And we've been all over the United States, and so we know that the humanity of the stories is what drives it. And I couldn't be happier that we are now including way beyond just women's stories. And we are actually in the middle of a name change to finally reflect the work that we're doing in the name that we have. So thank you for inviting me here today, and thank you for allowing these fabulous actors to perform for you. And thank you to Andrew, who's actually helping with tech this morning. And Aaron, I just love being on the same platform as you. You're amazing and wonderful, and I learn from you every time I listen to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Well, thank you to both of you. This concludes our webinar today. Thank you to Erin and Rhonda and all the actors, and to all of our attendees. We hope to see you at our next salon, Helping Others During Times of Crisis, which will be held on Monday, June 29th at 12 p.m. At this webinar, participants will gain insight and spiritual guidance on how to navigate crisis as a community with Rabbi Dr. Jacob J. Schachter from Yeshiva University. And our contact information is about to be on the screen. So please be in touch if you have any additional questions or if you need any more information from us. Thank you.